Hi, my name is Rochelle Groh, and I'm obsessed with all things business, especially networking. Oftentimes, the opportunities that we have in business and even personally comes down to who we know. I love helping people build a thriving network with genuine people, even if they are new to the game, afraid to say the wrong thing, or need a reminder to just do it. I'm a California transplant living in Northern England who's taken her business chops from California to New York and now the US to the UK. I work from home and run 2 businesses. No matter if you're a networking beginner or not, I can teach you the step-by-step behind-the-scenes secrets to building a network that you love. Pop in your earbuds and get ready to be encouraged and have some fun while you learn. This is Allergic to Small Talk by Cut Class. Hey there, and welcome back to Allergic to Small Talk. You can catch me here every week, or you can follow me on Insta at It's Row Grow. Today, I wanted to talk to you about when things don't go to plan. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because my day today did not go as planned. Today, I was supposed to interview 2 really cool people as guests on my podcast. I had one scheduled at 10:30 in the morning, and then I had a second one scheduled at 1 p.m. I did all the preparation I needed to do in terms of meeting with each of these guests before actually creating a podcast episode with them, because I always like to vet my guests beforehand just to make sure we're like the right fit and make sure that I'm hitting on topics that are important to them and also hitting on topics that are important to me as well as you as the listeners. And I've also typed up introductions for them, right? Because I don't really like to do things off the cuff so much. I really do like to be very prepared. I've done research on these 2 particular people and their niche, sent out the calendar invites, made sure to send the link to the specific recording platform for the podcast. I use Zencaster, so my link was ready to rock and roll. And I showed up for my first podcast guest, and 10:30, right on the money, hits, and my guest isn't in the room. So I start to think, all right, maybe they're having trouble getting into the room. I'm going to shoot them an email. So I shoot them an email. I don't hear back. It gets to almost 10:40, and I realize, you know what, maybe this person's not going to show up. And I thought, okay, maybe it was my fault. Maybe because we are in 2 time zones, maybe it was 10:30 their time and not 10:30 my time. So whatever, no big deal. Sent another email and I said, hey, I'm going to hop back on at 3:30. 10:30 your time on the East Coast is going to be 3:30 for me. So let's reconnect them. Never heard back from that email. So I go on with my day and 1 o'clock hits and I'm like, all right, great. I'm ready for my second interview today. Surely this one's going to go off without a hitch. And I get an email from the person I'm supposed to interview at 1 p.m. And they said they're having technical difficulties. No problem. 105, 110, 115. I say, hey, are you all right on your end? We're exchanging emails back and forth. And lo and behold, we have to reschedule. By this time, it's about 120. So that podcast also didn't get recorded. So I had 2 podcast guests that I was supposed to record today, all prepared. I was ready to rock and roll, and they didn't go to plan. And, I could have sat back and been super upset and sad about the fact that maybe my time was wasted or maybe I didn't prepare them enough. Maybe, could have gone round and round with all the thoughts of how could I have fixed this? How could I have avoided this? How could I make this better next time? So instead of doing that, I said, you know what? I'm going to turn some lemon into lemonade. And here we are. I'm going to record a podcast and do a solo show. Solo shows for me sometimes are a bit difficult because I have to create all of the content myself and I don't have a guest to kind of spar with in terms of a conversation. I typically really prepare for solo shows much more than I do for guest shows. And that's because I'm so nervous to carry a show all on my own, right? Again, these are just like solo conversations. Nobody else knows that this is going on in my head. But I wanted to share this with you today because A, I'm not prepared for this solo show. And B, Sometimes things in business, things just don't go to plan. So, how do you, as a business owner, a networker that's out in the world, handle things that don't go to plan? And so I thought I would share a couple of strategies with you that you could apply to networking. You can even apply it to anything that you're doing in your business or anything in your life. And I want to take this back to a conversation that I've had with my business coach and life coach. His name's Scott Forgy. He's so awesome, such a dynamic human being. He coaches executives from LinkedIn and Google, and he's coached hundreds of thousands of people just like me and you all around the world. And one of the things that he's always coached us on are expectations. And when you have expectations, that is when things can go really awry. And today, I had the expectation of how perfect my next two shows were going to be. My next two shows were going to be so awesome because I found these dynamic guests. I'm ready to rock and roll. I've done all the preparation. I've done everything that I could, but then it all went to shit, right? And it was because I had built up how awesome and how amazing today was going to be, but it just didn't go to plan. So I could have just realized I was going to have two podcasts to record today, and that was it. And how they went forward is how they were going to go forward. But I had this big expectation that I was going to have so much content for my next two podcasts, and it didn't go to plan. So it kind of led to a bit of an upset. Now, a second thing I want to touch on is how do you manage that upset, right? So for me, there's two things that come to mind for me when I'm in an upset. One is how do you release that upset? And then number two, how long is the duration of that upset? Number one, how I handle the upset is I just talked to somebody about it. I called my good friend, Mike Richardson. He's in Colorado. I kind of shared what was happening. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to hear from Mike how sad he felt for my day, but it was more so just to talk about it. And then the second thing is how long that duration of the upset lasts. With Scott's coaching, we've been given tips and tools to get us out of upsets quicker than normal. So I give myself a certain amount of time to be upset and then move on because upset's going to happen, right? Maybe it's not necessarily with somebody making your podcast interviews, but maybe it's a meeting didn't turn out the way you expected. Maybe an employee didn't do something that you had expected, or maybe there's just something that's happened in your life that's created some type of upset. And it's really important to set a time limit on that upset. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I gave myself a time limit on this upset. I really wanted to give myself only 30 minutes to be upset about it and then move on. I also like to set limits on how long I allow myself to be upset because I'm really up to some big things in the world. What I stand for in the world and what I'm creating for others and my contributions to businesses, to my family, and to my friends, my responsibility is so much bigger. And I literally don't have time to be upset for long periods of time. But what I've also learned with Scott is if you can't manage your upsets are going to manage what you're going to create from that space. For example, I was in a place of upset. And as soon as I got out of that place of upset, I created this podcast. And while it's not like this crazy creation, I am creating something from a space that's not an upset. So I gave myself 30 minutes to be upset about it, and then I moved on. Another thing that this situation has made me think about is the book called Stretch by Scott Sonnenschein. And it's a really fantastic book because it talks about how people are always wanting more and getting more sometimes seems like it's money, a big title or a bigger budget or a bigger team, etc. But it turns out that's actually the wrong mindset. And it's really when people, organizations, and teams have very little to work with that makes them extremely creative. So I didn't have two podcast guests today to work with to help me create content. And this actually freed me to find a creative and productive way to solve the problem. And it allowed me to create this particular podcast. So, how do you handle upsets when things don't go to plan in your life or your business or whatever it is that you're up to? Because upsets happen. What do you do to manage them? So I really hope that you enjoyed this off the cuff podcast today, which is a little different from something that I've created in the past, but I thought I would jump on and create a podcast from a space and experience that was real and that maybe you also experience in your life or your business. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode today, and I look forward to catching you next week. Bye for now.